Some of the biggest rock and roll stars are still on stage while fighting pain that never goes away. 15. Rock and roll stars. Suffering with chronic diseases is filled with legends whose bodies are breaking, but whose music refuses to stop. Let us show you how these icons keep playing, even when their own bodies are trying to shut them down. 1. Phil Collins. Phil Collins didn't just sit behind drums, he made them breathe. With Genesis, with solo hits, with every crashing beat, he built songs that felt like storm. But then the rhythm started slipping, not from lack of passion, from pain, from something he couldn't fix with practice. Nerve damage. A quiet, creeping thief that stole everything from the wrists down. It started after back surgery. Then another, then more. Each one leaves more numbness, more weakness. His hands trembled, his grip faded, until one day the sticks wouldn't stay between his fingers. For the drummer who gave us In the Air Tonight, it was like cutting out his heart. He didn't scream about it. He didn't make headlines. He just adapted, sat down, let others drum for him. He picked up the mic and kept singing, even when his body said no. But fans could see it. The struggle behind the smile, the way he leaned on the mic stand, the weight in his voice. He toured anyway, even when he had to be helped to the stage, even when he sang sitting down, looking like a shadow of the man who once leapt from drum risers. But his voice still hit, still carried that pain, that soul. Behind the scenes, he talked about the grief, losing more than the drums, losing control, losing independence. But he also talked about what was left, the songs, the fans, the fire. He gave his final performances with a quiet dignity that said, "This is who I am now, and that's enough." No theatrics, just a heart. His son played drums behind him. The torch passed, not with regret, but pride. Phil Collins didn't let nerve damage end him. He reshaped himself, turned loss into legacy. And every time he stepped out, sitting tall, holding the mic with shaking hands, he reminded the world, you don't need to hit the drums to feel the beat. Sometimes it lives in the silence between. 2. Tony Iommi. Tony Iommi didn't just invent heavy metal, he forged it from pain. The riffs that powered Black Sabbath came from hands that had already been broken. He lost the tips of 2 fingers in a factory accident when he was 17. Most would have quit. Tony made prosthetic fingertips, dropped the tuning, and created a sound that shook the earth. Decades later, pain came for him again, not in his hands, but in his blood. Lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's, a quiet threat hiding inside his lymphatic system. It didn't announce itself with fireworks, just fatigue, a swollen node, a creeping dread. By 2012, while Sabbath was gearing up for a reunion, Tony was sitting in a doctor's office staring at scans and thinking about death. The treatment hit like a hammer. Chemo, radiation, nausea that curled him over. Fevers, weakness. His hair thinned, his weight dropped. But he didn't stop. While others would have retreated, Tony suited up and went back to work. Sabbath's final album, a tour, shows across the world while poison moved through his veins. Fans had no idea how bad it was. He'd be at the hospital in the morning, getting pumped full of substances that burned his insides, and playing Iron Man that same night. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He just refused to disappear. He talked about it later, quietly. The scans, the pills, the nights he felt like his body might give out mid-solo. But he also talked about purpose, about riffs keeping him alive, about music louder than fear. Now he's in remission, but the word doesn't mean safety. It means pause. The cancer can come back, might already be watching, but Tony doesn't wait for it. He writes, records, lives. This is a man who built his entire legacy by refusing to quit when his body told him to. The disease didn't defeat him. He turned it into rhythm, into fuel, into one more crushing riff. Tony Iommi didn't lose to cancer. He plugged in his amp and played through it. 3. Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson didn't just hear music, he lived in it. He didn't write songs. he built universes. With Pet Sounds, he pulled beauty from thin air, layering harmonies like waves, painting emotions with sound. But behind all that brilliance was a mind cracking under pressure. Schizoaffective disorder, part schizophrenia, part bipolar disorder, tore at him from the inside. In the 1960s, while the Beach Boys smiled on TV, Brian was drifting into darkness. He stopped touring, locked himself in the studio, then in his room, then in his mind. He heard voices no one else heard, saw things no one else saw. Sometimes he vanished entirely, days without speaking. Music was the only place he could still breathe. People called him eccentric, a fragile genius, but they didn't see the war. Hallucinations whispered cruelty, delusions tangled his thoughts. His mood swung like a wrecking ball, elation to despair in hours. The world thought he was just weird, but he was drowning. Therapists sedated him senseless. Managers exploited him. Some tried to save him. Most gave up. His piano sat silent. His eyes were vacant. But somewhere, in all that silence, something small refused to die. He came back, slowly, carefully. With help, with love, with time. He returned to the stage. His body stiff, his voice worn, but his soul still sparkling. The voices didn't leave. He just learned to live alongside them, not in peace, but in partnership. His music changed. It carried weight now. Every note felt earned. Fans didn't just listen, they watched in awe. Every show was a miracle. A man who had been swallowed by his own mind had found his way back. Not fully, but enough. Brian Wilson didn't beat his illness. He worked with it, wrote through it, performed beside it. And when he sings, fragile, trembling, honest, it's not just music. It's proof that even in madness, light still flickers, that beauty can rise from the deepest dark. And Brian, he's still here, still harmonizing with ghosts, still building sound out of chaos. 4. Peter Frampton. Peter Frampton could make a guitar weep, sing, speak. He was a magician with strings. Frampton Comes Alive wasn't just a hit. It was a moment, a flash of pure talent burning across the sky. But by 2019, the hands that once moved like lightning were failing him. Not from age, from something slower, colder. Inclusion body myositis. IBM is a rare muscle-wasting disease. It doesn't end quickly. It steals slowly. A stumble, a weak grip. Then one day, the pick falls from your hand and doesn't come back. Frampton knew. He felt it creeping in, knew what it meant. For a guitarist, it was like watching your voice disappear. He didn't cry publicly. He planned, declared a farewell tour before the disease could take everything. A race against time. Every night, he played like it was the last. Fans knew it too. The air was different. Every solo a goodbye. Offstage, the battle was harder. Getting dressed, holding a fork. Simple things, now enormous. His fingers didn't answer like they used to. The pain wasn't sharp, it was constant, a dull, growing ache that never left. But Peter didn't stop. He didn't shrink. He opened up, talked about it, let people in, showed them the fear, the sadness, but also the gratitude for the years he had, the fans who stayed, the music that still filled his head even when his hands couldn't. He kept writing, composing, not with fingers, but with his mind. He guided others, created anyway, because some musicians don't need full strength to make noise. They just need a heart. Peter Frampton didn't go quietly. He faced the silence, shouted into it, and kept going. IBM tried to erase him, but he turned the disease into a deadline and filled the space with fire. He still smiles, still plays what he can. And when he does, every note says the same thing. I'm not done. Not yet. 5. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne was never meant to go quietly. He was the bat-biting prince of madness, the indestructible soul of heavy metal. For decades, he stumbled, shrieked, and survived things no human should. But in 2020, something caught up with him. Not a crash, not an overdose, not a scandal. Parkinson's, a slow creeping disease that didn't explode, it just eroded. It started with tremors, small stumbles. He blamed it on old age, on a lifetime of chaos. But this wasn't just the price of fame. It was something deeper. His body was betraying him day by day. And when he finally said the word, Parkinson's, the world went still. This wasn't something Ozzy people knew. He wasn't flying off ATVs or screaming at the moon. He was quiet, tired, shaky. The disease took the stage away from him, not in one blow, but in pieces. A canceled tour here, a postponed gig there. The man who once howled into stadiums was now whispering into interviews about balance issues and memory fog. But he didn't give up, didn't crawl into the dark. He released Ordinary Man. Then Patient Number 9. Albums soaked in grief and guts. His voice cracked more. His lyrics hit harder. Fans didn't just hear Ozzy, they felt him bleeding through the speakers. Behind the scenes, he struggled, needed help to walk, fought depression, faced surgeries. But Sharon stood beside him like always. His family, his anchor, his fans, his lifeline. He talks about the end now, about mortality, but not with fear, with frustration. He still wants to scream, still wants to stand, still wants to be Ozzy. Parkinson's just keeps pushing back. Ozzy Osbourne isn't the monster he once was, but he's still fighting, still moving forward, one shaking step at a time. And when the lights go down and the first chord hits, he's still there, scarred, staggering, and still ready to raise hell. 6. Mick Mars. Mick Mars never chased the spotlight. While Motley Crue exploded in flames, sleaze, and chaos, he stood in the shadows, still, twisted, silent. The crowd saw mystery. They didn't see pain. They didn't know his spine was betraying him in real time. Ankylosing spondylitis, a rare, incurable disease that slowly fuses your vertebrae. That locks your back, that turns motion into agony. He was diagnosed at 17. While others were learning to drive, Mick was learning how to walk without collapsing. But he didn't let it stop him. He picked up a guitar, let it scream for him. While his spine stiffened, his fingers lit fire. Tour after tour, album after album, Mick's body got worse. He shrank, curved, every movement hurts. But he never said much, never made excuses. He just stood his ground, played like hell. Let Vince and Tommy bounce around the stage while he anchored the chaos. Fans didn't realize what he was going through. They thought it was an act, Mick, the quiet dark one. But behind the curtain, it was a war. Pain meds, ice packs, days where standing felt like punishment, nights where sleep never came. Still, he showed up, always. And when the band reunited, so did he. Bent, stiff, but unbreakable. Until one day, it became too much. In 2022, he stepped down from touring. The disease had finally taken too much. He couldn't move freely, couldn't bear the weight, not without falling apart. But he didn't stop making music. He turned inward, focused on recording, on sound, on legacy. His fingers still worked, barely, but enough to write, to scream through strings, to prove that even in pain, the fire doesn't go out. He rarely talks about it, but when he does, he's blunt. This isn't inspiration porn, it's survival. Decades of fighting a body that bends until it breaks. Mick Mars didn't crumble. He endured. He didn't need to move to leave a mark. He stood still and made the world shake. Ankylosing spondylitis tried to silence him, but Mick answered with distortion, with defiance, and a sound that will outlive every broken bone in his back. 7. Bret Michaels. Bret Michaels didn't get to choose when the war started. He was 6, too young to understand needles, too young to measure carbs. But diabetes doesn't care. Type 1 hit him early, and it never left. It didn't just change his body, it shaped his life. Before he held a mic, he was holding insulin. Then came Poison. Stadiums, girls, bandanas. Brett made it look easy, like he was built for the spotlight. But behind the glam, he was counting blood sugar, injecting between songs, living on edge. Rock and roll isn't kind to structure, and diabetes demands it. Every tour was a risk. Exhaustion, dehydration, skipped meals, each one a landmine. He passed out more than once, woke up in hotel rooms hooked to IVs. On stage, he smiled. Off stage, he monitored. If he missed a sign, it could have meant coma, or worse. But he never let it stop him, never let fans see the fear. He turned his condition into purpose, became a spokesperson, built a foundation, raised awareness. He wasn't just a frontman anymore. He was a symbol that you can live loud even when your body is trying to quiet you down. Then came more battles, a brain hemorrhage in 2010, a hole in his heart. Complications stacked like amps, but Brett kept singing, kept smiling, not because he was fine, but because he refused to stop. His fans don't just see a rock star, they see a survivor, a man who lives in a world where one wrong number could end him and still walks on stage like he owns the sky. Type 1 diabetes didn't take Bret Michaels. I tried, but he bit back, turned syringes into swords, blood tests into armor, and walked through it all in cowboy boots and eyeliner. 8. Neil Young. Neil Young has always walked just left of the path, never polished, never predictable. His voice cracked, his guitar wobbled, but his songs, raw truth. And behind that truth was something invisible, something that could strike anytime, anywhere, epilepsy. The seizures started young, silent at first, a strange feeling. A blink too long, then worse, muscle spasms, blackouts, time lost. A brain short-circuiting without warning. 1 minute he'd be playing guitar, next, the floor. He never made it part of his brand, never stood in front of cameras and shouted it out. But it was there, always, in the quiet moments, in the tremble before a show. The fear he never let slip. Touring with epilepsy is a risk. Flashing lights, stress, lack of sleep. Any of it could trigger an episode. Neil had to plan everything, monitor, adjust. And when he couldn't control it, he'd just vanish. Take time, regroup. Fans called him mysterious, but he was just staying alive. He used medication, meditation, music, found ways to soften the edges of his world. He let the rhythms in his head guide the ones in his songs. And somehow, it worked. His art wasn't in spite of epilepsy, it was shaped by it. He never wanted sympathy, just space. Space to create, to breathe, to manage a brain that could betray him at any second. People thought he was unpredictable, but inside, he was just surviving. And he never stopped working. Album after album, tour after tour. Through it all, he played with a kind of urgency most musicians never reach, because he knew how fast it could all go black. Neil Young didn't beat epilepsy. He didn't need to. He built a career in spite of it, a legacy wrapped in distortion and honesty. The seizures still come, but so do the songs. And every time he picks up that guitar, he proves that unpredictability can be beautiful. 9. Bruce Dickinson. Bruce Dickinson didn't just sing, he flew, literally. Iron Maiden's voice was also a commercial pilot, a fencer, and a novelist. But his greatest skill was turning oxygen into thunder. His voice didn't hit notes, it launched missiles. And then cancer came for the launch pad, a tumor at the base of his tongue. Throat cancer, the cruelest target. In 2015, he was diagnosed. Quietly, privately. A lump, a scan, the truth. His weapon, his voice, was in danger of going silent forever. treatment wasn't optional. Radiation, chemotherapy, weeks of burning, blistering, breaking. He lost weight, couldn't eat, could barely talk. But he didn't stop dreaming of the stage. He finished the treatment, waited, wondered. Would his voice come back? Would fans hear him roar again, or just whisper? Recovery wasn't fast, but Bruce isn't the kind of man who waits politely. He trained, pushed, practiced, forced air through scarred tissue until sound returned. When he walked back on stage, he wasn't the same. He was more, stronger, angrier. A man who'd seen the void and screamed at it until it backed down. The crowd didn't just cheer, they howled, because they knew. The man who stood before them had nearly vanished. Bruce talked about it, not to get applause, but to warn, to show others that even if cancer takes your edge, it doesn't take your fight. He used the spotlight to shine light on early detection, on strength, on survival. He still sings, still tours, still hits notes most singers wouldn't dream of. And every one of those notes carries new weight. It's not just music, it's defiance. Cancer didn't take Bruce Dickinson. It just made him louder. He beat it, and then wrote songs about it, not soft ballads, war chants. Bruce doesn't do it quietly. He never did. The tumor is gone, the voice is back, and the stage? Still his battlefield. 10. Rick Allen. Rick Allen should have disappeared in 1984. He should have been a tragic headline, a one-sentence obituary in the music press. Drummer loses arm in car crash. But Rick didn't vanish. He adapted. He changed the rules. And in doing so, he became more than a drummer. He became a revolution. He was only 21. Def Leppard was on fire. Pyromania was burning up charts. And then, metal, glass, blood. His Corvette flipped. His left arm was torn off at the shoulder. Gone. Forever. For most drummers, that's the end. But Rick wasn't interested in endings. He spent months in rehab, fought phantom pain, fought depression. But he didn't give in. Instead, he helped build a new kind of drum kit. Electronic pedals, custom triggers. His feet would now do the work his missing arm used to. It wasn't a gimmick. It was evolution. By 1986, he was back on stage. Fans screamed. Some cried. Not because he was pitiful, but because he was powerful. Watching Rick behind the kit, playing Rock of Ages with one arm and both feet, was like watching a man punch fate in the teeth. But it wasn't just the crash. He fought addiction, trauma, the invisible weight that comes after survival. But every time he stepped behind the kit, he reminded the world, survival isn't luck, it's work. He toured endlessly, recorded hit after hit. His drumming changed, became tighter, more deliberate, but the groove never left. He made his limitations part of his sound. He didn't just recover, he redefined what drumming could be. Now, decades later, he's still going, still playing with Def Leppard, still inspiring kids who think they're broken. He speaks openly about trauma, PTSD, healing. He turns pain into power, both on stage and off. Rick Allen didn't just survive that crash. He turned it into fuel, into rhythm, into a second life. He didn't lose an arm. He gained a legend. And every night, when the lights hit his kit, the message is clear. The beat never stopped. 11. Steven Tyler. Steven Tyler doesn't walk. He struts. He doesn't sing. He detonates. For decades, the Aerosmith frontman lived with his mic stand like a battle staff, spinning, screaming, and seducing stadiums. But what fans didn't hear through the high notes was the pain, constant, creeping, and unfixable. Tyler suffers from neuropathy, a chronic nerve condition that makes walking a firestorm. Every step sends pain signals through his feet like sparks on broken glass. Add that to decades of vocal strain, surgeries on his throat, and a body scarred by addiction. And you've got a man who's burning at both ends, and still on stage. He's had foot surgeries, vocal surgeries, and stints in rehab that read like tour dates. Not for relapses of ego, but because his body keeps breaking. His vocal cords have been repaired more times than his guitars. His legs ache under the spotlight. But Tyler doesn't sit down. He screams through it. Every tour is a gamble. One wrong move, and he's off his feet. One vocal tear, and he's silent. But he keeps showing up, spitting scarves and swagger, even when he limps backstage the moment the lights go out. He doesn't just perform, he defies collapse. And when the pain gets too loud, he checks into treatment, not for headlines, but for survival. Because addiction, for Steven, is a disease too, not a choice, not a scandal. A battle he's still fighting. Steven Tyler is a man held together by thread and thunder. Neuropathy bites at his heels. Addiction claws at his mind. His voice isn't what it once was, but when the music hits and he grabs that mic, there's no doubt he's still here, still dangerous, still screaming like tomorrow's not promised. Because for Steven, every show could be the last, so he makes sure it feels like it. They rest in noise. 12. Sheryl Crow. Sheryl Crow was flying high in 2006. Grammys, world tours, sold-out shows. She was the voice of cool, a little rock, a little country, a lot of soul. Then came the mammogram, a shadow, a biopsy, a diagnosis, breast cancer. It didn't care about her career, it didn't care about her schedule. It was coming anyway. It was caught early, but that didn't make it easy. Surgery was first, a lumpectomy, clean margins. Then came radiation, weeks of exhaustion, burned skin, sleepless nights. Sheryl didn't disappear. She just worked through the pain, even when the spotlight felt too bright. Fans never saw the worst of it. The moments curled up on the bathroom floor, the terror between checkups, the doubt, the grief, the fear of not just dying, but fading, losing herself, losing the stage. But she fought like hell. She spoke out, loudly. Not about fame, but about mammograms, about early detection. She became a face for breast cancer awareness, open, honest, vulnerable. Her pain became a purpose. She started a foundation, built a wellness center, gave interviews that weren't rehearsed. She told women what they needed to hear. Check yourself, fight early, and never pretend you're fine when you're not. Her music changed too. The edges softened, the lyrics got deeper, still catchy, still confident, but now soaked in survival. Every chorus had more weight, every performance more gratitude. She's in remission, but cancer leaves fingerprints. The fear lingers, the memories too. But she keeps going, keep touring, keep singing songs that remind the world what resilience looks like. Sheryl Crow didn't just survive breast cancer, she transformed it into fuel, into music, into a megaphone for women everywhere. And when she steps on stage now, it's not just a concert, it's a victory lap. Cancer tried to stop her. Instead, it gave her a new verse, and she's still singing. 13. Vivian Campbell. Vivian Campbell knew how to play through pain. His riffs were fast, sharp, and alive. Dio, Whitesnake, then Def Leppard. He shredded stages while the spotlight burned. But in 2013, something inside him started burning too. It wasn't the music, it was Hodgkin's lymphoma. Blood cancer, slow, brutal, and relentless. He didn't disappear. He didn't take time off. He walked into rehearsals with poison in his veins, chemo, radiation, meds that turned his stomach and blurred his vision. And still, he played, night after night. He didn't miss tours, didn't ask for breaks. Most fans didn't even know. Backstage, he was fading, dizzy, sweating through his shirt before the first note hit. The treatments ate at him, hair falling out, strength leaking away. But he stood tall, guitar strapped on like armor, and he played through it all. Not out of pride, out of stubbornness, out of love. It went into remission, then came back, then back again. new treatments, stem cell therapy, needles, side effects, hope. Then more scans, more fear, more rounds. But the shows kept going, and so did Vivian. He talked about it, not like a victim, but like a soldier. Told people to get checked, told them not to wait. He didn't want sympathy. He wanted noise. He wanted the crowd, the stage, the sound. He kept performing with Def Leppard through every relapse, through exhaustion, through pain. Fans had no idea how close to the edge he was, because Vivian never let cancer take the music, not for a second. Even now, he's still fighting, still showing up, still shredding under the lights. His blood might betray him, but his hands still remember how to roar. Vivian Campbell didn't ask to be an inspiration. He just refused to stop. Every time he steps on stage, it's not just a show, it's defiance. A middle finger to fate, to disease, to silence. Cancer tried to slow him down, but it made him faster, louder, sharper. And every solo since that diagnosis has carried one simple message: you're not taking me today. 15. Jason Becker. Jason Becker was fired. At 19, he was already a legend in the making, playing with Cacophony, then chosen to replace Steve Vai in David Lee Roth's band. His fingers moved faster than thought. His solos weren't just fast, they were alive. Then his legs started to drag, then his hand. Then came the diagnosis: ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Terminal, fast-moving, cruel. Doctors gave him 3 to 5 years, told him he'd never play again, told him he'd lose everything: his movement, his voice, his breath. They were wrong about one thing: he lost his body. But he never lost his music. It started slowly. First the legs, then the arms, then the ability to speak. But Jason didn't quit. He adapted. With help from his father, they built a system, a chart, then a computer, so he could communicate with just his eyes. One blink at a time, one note at a time. And then he kept writing, kept composing full pieces in his head, dictated them blink by blink, collaborated with musicians who brought his vision to life. He couldn't move, but his mind raced, his soul screamed, and the music never stopped. He released albums, gave interviews, laughed, flirted, lived. Fans didn't just admire his talent, they stood in awe of his will. He became more than a guitarist. He became proof that the spirit doesn't die when the body does. ALS took his fingers, his voice, his freedom, but it couldn't touch the fire inside him. Even now, decades past his predicted death, Jason Becker sits in his chair, trapped in flesh, but freer than most people will ever be. He still composes, still dreams, still fighting. And every time a guitarist plays one of his pieces, or a fan hears one of his symphonic creations, they're hearing a war cry from a man who never surrendered. Jason Becker should have disappeared, but he didn't. He transformed. ALS tried to silence him. Instead, it gave him a louder stage. One blink at a time, he's still writing, still creating, still here.